Hi everyone. So recently we have observed that Indian rupee has fallen to its all-time low of 90. It has breached the 90 rupee mark. It has been a major psychological factor in the minds of various investors, in the mind of RBI, that it may went further low. So let's talk about that what are the major reasons which have caused the depreciation of a currency. And first, let's understand what is depreciation and why it's important for India to maintain its dominance. I would not say its dominance, but maintain at least a bit of a comparability that it can benefit to us and also it is benefiting how US. So let's talk it one by one. So first of all, let's talk about what is depreciation in simple term. So depreciation is something. Let me explain you with an analogy. Let me explain that it is a pen. It is a marker, and just imagine that today the value of this marker is 10 rupee. And what I do that I usually import this marker from US, right? So what I do whenever I have to buy this marker, I pay the importer a certain amount of money which is in the dollar. That let's compare, like it cost $1 and it cost me around 40 rupees. But 1 year later, if the same pen which have costed me $1, so its value is same as $1, but now I have to buy it as 80 rupees. That shows the depreciation of a currency. In simple term, if I have to talk about, it is the losing value of either of commodity or of a currency. We talk in term of currency. Now, let's talk about that why it's important for us to compare our currency in term of dollar. Why not we talk about euro? Why not we talk about yen? Why not we talk about any of the currency like pound of UK? Why it's important to compare with US dollar? The answer to this question lies to the very fact to the dominance of dollar. The dollar is money, if I have to sum up in one line only. Now let me tell you the reasons why the dominance of dollar is there. Why dollar is too much powerful, which is the major reason why USA is able to dictate its policies over the other countries. Why USA is able to put tariff on countries and other countries are compelled to come in a negotiation and they have to follow whatever the US say. Why it is? The very first reason is that dominance of US has always been, if we compare it in the post World War II condition, and all the currencies were in doomed. At that time, the one strong currency was dollar. Now, if I talk about in current time, around 55 to 56% of the global trade invoice is happening in dollar. That clearly shows and it clearly mentions that why dollar is important, why Indian rupee is compared with the dollar. That is why dollar is really important with respect to our financial market. Now let's talk about how does the currency game works. Like how are we able to find that $1 is 85 rupee, 90 rupee and how all this work. It's just simple game of supply and demand. For example, if we talk about in comparison to dollar, if there is more demand of dollar, that clearly shows that dollar is much more valuable. That clearly shows Indian currency is in much less demand. That clearly explains the game that dollar is much valuable, Indian currency less valuable. That shows people are willing to pay much more Indian rupee to buy the same amount of dollar. That shows that dollar is much more strong than Indian rupee. That explains the whole game that why dollar is important and how does it currency manipulation or currency depreciation work. Now let's talk about in the proper senses, like why Indian currency has been depreciating. So there are certain reasons. You might have seen that old clip of Prime Minister Modi in which he was saying that he know how dollar work. First of all, there is no political reason behind it. Even though you may link the reason to the political aspect, but in clear aspect, there is no political reason behind this. It's all about financial market. Now let me explain to you what are the major causes which have led to the depreciation of Indian rupee. The very first thing, if I have to point out, is that the demand. As I've already told you that the importance of dollar is there, so people are spending more money, more Indian rupee to buy the same quantity of dollar. That shows that Indian rupee is depreciating and the dollar is strengthening. That has been the game for the past decades. The second core reason, is the bad performance of Indian equity market. First of all, let me tell you what is an equity market. An equity market is something where people buy the stocks, or we can say buying the shares of either of the company, or they are investing in India. If we see from the past few years, if I talk about data, around 1.52 lakh crore have been taken out from India. That shows this much of FPI outflow happened in India. It has been even being mentioned that India's equity market has been one of the worst performer in Asia, and also is compared to global, it is in the list. Now why it is happening? Because the global investors are treating India as a convenient liquidity source. Means whenever there are difficult global headwinds, the conditions are not good, they will come to India and they will invest there. But whenever there is again dollar is strong, they will go back and they will take out their money from India, and again they are going to spend in US. That is the major reason that why Indian rupee is also not able to perform that much good. Now let's talk about the third reason. The third reason is again the geopolitics, I would say. Recently, we have seen that there is 50% tariff which is being imposed on India by the US president, whose major aim is to make America great again. But I don't know, like if he's going into that direction, but it's definitely is not affecting Indian rupee in a good manner. Because let me explain you this. If there is a tariff over Indian goods, mean the foreigners are not able to buy Indian goods, and they are not able to buying Indian goods mean Indian rupee is again in less demand. Again, as I already told you, it's the game of supply and demand. Indian rupee is again in less demand. Thus, it's causing depreciation. What if I have told you that tariff would have not been there? Let's explain through an example. If there is a, again I would say this pen. If India is producing this pen and it is exporting to US, and there is no 50% tariff, like if I mention, if there is, let's understood, if there is an FTA, free trade agreement, and there is no duty which is being imposed on this pen at the same amount where Indian is buying, at that same amount US can also buy. That shows there is no issue for that pen to get sold in the US. People will also willingly to buy this pen, because most probably it would happen that this pen will cost less as comparison to the domestically produced pen. That means the demand of this Indian rupee will increase, and finally it will get strong against the against the dollar. So this has been the major reason, as I already told you, the tariff. Another reason which I am able to point out, trade deficit. Let me explain you the trade deficit. Trade deficit is something like we are importing more and we are exporting less. That mean there is more outflow of dollar than inflow of dollar. Inflow of dollar mean people are giving less dollars to us to buy the same amount of money, of Indian currency. Means if there are more imports, that is what India is. India is an import dependent country. That clearly shows we are outflowing dollar. We are giving other people more dollar. That again will increase the demand of dollar, and again will increase its value as comparison to Indian currency. So this is also a major reason. Now, if it is all these things are happening at global level, how it will affect us? The simple answer is inflation. In more precise term, if I have to mention, it is import dependent inflation. But in India, it's not a much matter of worry, because India is largely a nation which produce food items by its own locally or domestically. That means it doesn't matter what's coming from the foreign country to us, because we are producing by ourselves and we are consuming at the same content. That shows that the middle class is not much affected, but the person who is trading, the person whose industries is largely dependent on the imports from the US, he's hardly being affected. Now, if the problem is there, then definitely there's going to be a certain solution. The solution lies in the very fact, again, we have to disrupt the supply and demand game. Recently, the RBI governor has said, we are letting Indian rupee to find its path alone in the global headwind and in the market situation. That that shows that we are not intervening, but we have to intervene, otherwise it will cross 100. So, what are the various steps which are available to India? More precisely, if I have to mention, which is available to RBI, because RBI is the main protagonist who can play a major role in deciding what will be the value of rupee. What RBI will do? It have to sell dollar and is able to buy Indian rupee, because again what we have to do, we have to increase the demand. And for increasing demand, like, we have to buy that thing more. That will only will show na ki that Indian rupee demand is much more. So what it's going to do, it is going to sell dollar, and it is going to buy Indian money in order to maintain a proper or moderate rate, so that there is not much effect over country of India. This step has been taken by RBI around 2 to 3 times, and in future, I believe RBI is going to take another step in order to ensure that it doesn't fall below 95 mark. Second major step that India can do, I would say it is a long step, that is internationalization of Indian rupee. This has been the major focus of BRICS, for which US President Donald Trump has also even targeted and even won. If you are thinking even of the BRICS currency, then we are going to be get impacted by the tariff proposed by the US. But this has been the major thinking in the minds of the various BRICS members. That is what India is supposed to do. Internationalize the Indian rupee just like the dollar. How it's going to happen? It can happen by opening the Vostro account. Vostro account is like an opening a branch in a foreign country where the trade, or I would say any of the financial transaction, could happen in the Indian currency. This could have taken, and we have taken some positive step in this direction. For example, with Russia, we have signed various agreement in this aspect. Now, is the falling of Indian rupee, is it that bad? Let me tell you another aspect of it. It's not that much bad. It could lead us to a much higher export. Yeah, that's true. Because just imagine if the foreigner is able to buy the same thing in less dollar, because as I have told you, the dollar is now comparison to more stronger. That means he will prefer more Indian product. That will lead to increase in exports. Second thing, I have to explain you through an analogy. For example, if there is a company in Bangalore, IT based company, and it produces certain type of services to foreign country, and if there is a foreign client who around procure $1 million of their services. Now, let's apply mathematics here. If with respect to the earlier exchange rate, their money would have been less. But now, as the amount has increased, the total amount of profit that will come to that company will also substantially increase. That means the extra amount of money that will come, the company can use in increasing innovation or increasing the salary of their employees. So, this is another positive aspect. So, this has all been the game of rupee and dollar. This is less political aspect, but I would say it is important for our every citizen of our country. So, RBI needs to play a better role in order to ensure that it don't cross 100 rupee mark. Thank you.